this hooked up. Okay, that actually works. Turn it on. That works too. I think we have it. So, I'd like to thank everyone for being here today. Especially thank our visitors for being here. You're all very welcome, and we just love having you here. Stay around, please. Let us get to know you a little bit better. Special note, my parents are here, Howard and Pat. It's always just a pleasure to have them here. They are great grandparents. How awesome is that? Recently, great grandparents, which means my brother is a grandfather, which just scares me to death. Okay, it's not supposed to be the case. So Heather, the Toxies, I'm right behind you. Not right behind you, but eventually. Okay. But no, we're happy to have them here. And Tim in his eulogy mentioned, Brother Dunaway. I was like, he's talking about Dad, right? He's not talking about me, of course. But anyway, it's great to have everybody here. Today is a little different lesson because I'm going to talk about my recent trip to Mexico, and not just my recent trip, but me, Javier, and Eleazar Sanchez, a Spanish-speaking preacher from Dallas who lives in Dallas. He joined us, or technically we joined him on this trip. I would like to thank the elders and the church here for giving me the opportunity to go on this trip. Obviously, it would not be possible without their support, without everyone's support here. And I want y'all to know that this is not just my work, but it's everybody's work here, because everybody contributes to that. Many people have already asked about it, and we've had many conversations about it. But I want you to know that today we are barely touching the hem of the garment. So this is literally an overview. And I am happy to talk to anybody individually about as much as you want to, because I could literally talk for hours and hours about the trip. So let's get going. Before we get into just kind of the trip itself and essentially what we did, I have lots of pictures. I want to set the stage with this verse here. Matthew 9:35 through 38. Jesus was going through all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every kind of disease and every kind of sickness. Seeing the people, he felt compassion for them because they were distressed and dispirited like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Therefore, beseech the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest." And this is kind of the verse I want us to think about while we're going through this, all right? And individually. Now, I want to, as a lawyer, I've got lots of disclaimers, right? Just I say two things and then I say 10 disclaimers. This is not a everybody needs to learn Spanish and go to Mexico lesson, okay? You do not have to learn a different language. You do not have to leave the country, all right? There is plenty of work to do here in Birmingham. Not everybody is going to do the same thing, right? We all have different talents. We all have different roles, different abilities, all right? But regardless of who we are, what age we are, what talent level we are, what abilities we may or may not have, everybody can contribute. And so what I would encourage you to do as we talk about this lesson today is remember this verse, that the harvest is plentiful. Pray that the Lord of the harvest send out workers. Is ask yourself this: what kind of worker am I? Where can I be working? What can I be doing? And think about that. And if you're still uncertain what that role is, talk to the elders. All right, get input and feedback from them about options, what you can do. Already we have people in this congregation doing lots of things. And I'm hesitant to point out people because I would leave people out. But already people are working and doing things. So it's not like nobody's doing anything. People are doing lots and lots of work. So there's already built-in programs or things that you could just join and do. But regardless of what it is, hopefully this lesson, this talk will give you some encouragement to do what I think is the most important thing that Christians can do to change the world. We hear a lot about changing the world and making the world a better place. But in my opinion, what we can do to make the world a better place, other than living a sacrificial life and a Christ-centered life, is to just tell people about the gospel, to spread the gospel, you know, to bring one person to back to God through the gospel. That is a good life. That is a life worth living. So, done with that. Let's talk about Mexico. I don't know, does this pointer work? Oh, it does. All right, I may have to get off of here. So, here's where we went. We went to the Yucatan, which Cancun is right there. Some of you may or may not have been to Cancun. I have not, other than this trip. Merida is here and Campeche is here. So basically my time was spent in this area here. You'll notice it's essentially due south of Alabama. So you just start walking and swimming and you would get there, right? Now, back in the end of 2019, Javier and I went to the border, and we spent a lot of time right around in this area here, Brownsville, Matamoros, Reynosa. Then we drove through Monterey into Saltillo right here, all right? So that was about a year and a half ago, and right now we're helping a preacher, supporting a preacher, Angel Garza, in Saltillo, all right? Now, let's just kind of talk about the obvious thing that you're probably thinking. Isn't Mexico a very dangerous place to go? The short answer is yes. All right, it is, in many respects, it is dangerous, but also in many respects, you can go there and obviously come back unscathed. I've done that. It just depends on the risk level, right, that you're willing to undergo. There's also differences in where you go. So for instance, the northern part along the border is much more, it's a little scarier than in this area. The area where I was, especially Campeche, but even Merida, to a large extent Cancun, much more peaceful generally, all right? Now, so I definitely would go back. And to give you a sense, right now, I'll be a little hesitant to go to Matamoros or Reynosa right here. It would just depend. There's some difficult things going on right now. So the next time I go to Saltillo, which I would like to do that, I may fly in. It just depends, right? But I personally would go back. I probably would not take my daughter, all right? If those of you who know Lily and her hair, that's just a big kidnap me sign on her head. So I would be hesitant to do that, right? To take my daughter. Although in all likelihood, statistically, it would be perfectly fine, all right? I was always with locals, right? You're always with the local. They know where to go, where not to go, what times to go, what times not to go. So that's a huge help, all right? Also, we're not in the touristy areas, and sometimes the touristy areas are more dangerous because they're targets, right? Despite the 14 hours I spent in Cancun, I was not in a touristy area. So, but we flew into Merida, and initially we drove to Campeche. And just an overview, I spent about a week in Campeche, almost a week in Merida, and then flew out of Cancun. I was only in Cancun for about a day. I missed the third week of the trip because I had to come back. Lily was moving to Auburn, so I had to come back. But Javier and Eleazar stayed for a third week, and that was probably the hardest week. All right, they went to some smaller towns, and it was difficult, to say the least. So let's talk a little bit about pictures and people, and I'm gonna give you an overview of the cities, and then continue to dig down into the churches. And then, of course, then some individuals, because that's what it's all about. It's about individuals, meeting people, right? Having that relationship with them, getting to know them. And they just, that's the best part of the trip, is you develop relationships with other people. So, this is Sergio. So he was our guide and our host in Campeche. We stayed at his house. This is Javier. So he's the preacher here in Birmingham, who we support and who's just fantastic. So he's been in Calera for 20 years, but now he's working up in Gardendale, trying to build up that local group there. And so Javier's just fantastic. And this is Eliezer Sanchez, who I just met this trip. He is a preacher in the Dallas area, in a Spanish, he preaches in a Spanish church. Technically, he was the one that was invited on this, and he asked Javier and I to come along, and so we piggybacked with him. But he's great. He's great. Got to know him and develop a relationship with him, and it was just fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about Campeche, because I think it's important just to kind of maybe give you a little idea of where we are. If you remember, it's right on the coast, the sea. Okay, but there weren't beaches as much as it was kind of almost a dockside or a seaside area. Campeche is a very old, ancient town. The Spanish founded it way back when, since the mid 1500s. Okay, and so it's a very old town, but it's also a little bit smaller. It's only about 200,000 people. All right, whereas Merida is about 800,000. All right, about 200,000, so it definitely has a smaller feel. The road that runs along the sea is pretty modern. Okay, you have some modern hotels, you have a modern kind of shopping mall, some restaurants. They have a some tourists, but it's not touristy like Cancun is touristy. Mostly more, in Mexican tourist and off the beaten path type tourist. So it definitely does not have the touristy feel that other places have. And then as you get out of that area, that kind of strip area that runs along the sea, you get into the rest of Campeche, which kind of goes up into the hills. And I mean, if you've never been to Mexico, literally when you step across the border, it's different. It feels different, it looks different, it's just different. There are different degrees of that, all right? But it's just different than being in the United States. Objectively different, visually different. But it also, we're looking up from this is a Spanish fort, and we're looking out over the city, and we're seeing that this is downtown. There's an old part of town. It was literally surrounded by a wall because it kept getting attacked by pirates way back in the day. This is part of the old town. This is obviously the Catholic Church there. And then we have the church in Campeche, and so let's just take a moment to look at this. Obviously, the structure is basically enclosed on three sides. It's concrete block and then metal roof up here. Here's Javier. Here's Eliezer. All right. Now, one of the reasons that they actually have a nice metal frame structure like this is Sergio, who was our guest and host. He owns a construction company that does a lot with steel and metal construction. All right, so and we stayed in his home, and we'll see a picture of that later. But as you can tell, that building is open, right? There's no air conditioner at all, and it is hot in the Yucatan. So let me tell you, it is quite toasty. But this gentleman here, Lorenzo, he is the father of the preacher in Merida, who we will visit a little bit later on. Miguel, he's the song leader. So I I have an idea for our song leaders. I hope y'all will go with it. But their song leader is hooked up to a microphone with a ginormous speaker sitting here. And I think we should do that. I'm going to run that by the elders and see what they think. And he just belts it out, and it is fantastic, okay? It is great, and it's an open air, so I'm telling you that the whole block, hears. But he'll sing about a verse like that, and it's, I recorded it, but the audio does not come up in well at all, the difference. And then he'll stop, and the great thing is everybody else is like belting it out too, because they're trying to keep up with him. So their neighbors know when, they're singing hymns, So CV, you'd love it. So, but that's this family here. We ate breakfast with this family, Omar, most every morning. The hospitality is just over the top, right? Just over the top. So this is a view from if you're going into the building. You can see kind of the pulpit back there, and just how open it is. These are the bathrooms, baños, right here. And this is the street it's located on. It's definitely in, I would say this is a typical, here's the sign, right? And these doors, metal doors, are closed and locked when they leave. Most buildings in Mexico have the building, and then there's like a porch or a front area, and then a wall with gates, right, that protect the main building. And those are typically locked, and we'll see some more examples of that. But this would be a typical street in Mexico to a certain extent, and it's definitely the building is located in, a lower income part of the city, but also kind of typical. It's just kind of regular, right? So this is after services, and one of the things you want to know about if you visit a Spanish congregation is before and after services, all right, everybody shakes everybody's hand, all right, from the oldest to little kids, all right. Now, obviously, when you get into numbers 150, 200, that gets difficult, but typically their numbers are 30, 40, 50, 60, but everybody shakes everybody's hand, okay? Who cares about COVID, right? Trust me, you'll experience a lot worse than shaking hands. So that's the least of your germaphobe problems, okay? Which I think is wonderful, because, and I'm not saying we, kind of like the song leader and the karaoke microphone. I'm not saying we should necessarily institute that, but I would say this: it has struck me that there may go several services where, I don't necessarily speak to some people in the group, and that's not good. That's not good, on my part, because we can kind of come in and we sit at our same seat and we go out or whatever. And so it struck me that, I need to do a better job of speaking to people, So definitely things that we can learn from other cultures, and that's definitely one of them. And they won't, if you visit, they're not gonna, expect you or be upset with you if you don't, but just be ready for that. If you visit a Spanish-speaking congregation, that's gonna happen a lot. Okay, so here's a first world problem reality check for us all. This lady, this is how she brings her children to church, all right, on a moped, 4 of them, all right. Now, there is a dad, and he's working tonight. Well, when the dad comes, there's 2 mopeds, and the oldest girl rides with the dad, and the two young girls ride with the mom. That's their only means of transportation, is mopeds, which is very common in Mexico, because motorcycles, mopeds are cheaper. Cheap gas, it's just cheaper. Gas is very expensive in Mexico. But yes, I cringed because no helmets, right? I asked about that. They have helmets, but they just sometimes choose not to wear them. But this was actually I saw other babies on mopeds being held, all sorts of stuff. So yeah, our risk aversion is a lot a lot higher than theirs on some things, but it also is just, it's what they do, it's what they have, right? I'm sure if they could afford a car, they would. So the next time we're complaining about getting to services, yeah, check your privilege, right? And those are the three girls. I got to eat with them the Sunday night we left. Well, we left Monday, but that last Sunday night, and it was just fantastic. And this is just an example. We were eating with somebody literally every breakfast, every lunch at 2, and every supper at 8 or 9, just like Italy, right? It will kill you, okay? My stomach finally rebelled about day 10 or 11. It finally said no mas, right? It did. So, but the food is wonderful, right? It's not like Pablo's, right? It's not our Mexican food, it's real Mexican food. Food's wonderful. They are just beyond gracious with what they have. And this is why you go, this is what you do, because look at these three, right? Just wonderful. This is Sergio's house, all right? Remember I told you that all houses essentially have some sort of, if you look through the bars here, you'll see the main house. This is a wall. And in this porch area, this is his garage here. And this is his front door that goes to the porch. And then behind that, you can kind of see the door. But that's typically how they are. Sergio has a nice house, especially nice house by Mexico standards. Now it's not, there are nicer, definitely nicer. I saw the mountain brook of Campeche, okay? It's along the coast, as you would expect, and those houses are very nice, right? But there's not many of them, and they're all typically politicians and government officials. Sergio, having his own company and entrepreneurial, he's done pretty good, and his house, he has a very nice house, and we were able to stay there. So this is the bedroom we stayed. Me, Javier, and Eleazar stayed that first week in Campeche, and we were very happy to have it. One of the difficulties with going to Mexico and staying is kind of the tug of war you have with them over, please don't let me impose, I will stay in a hotel, versus we insist you stay with us, okay? That's the tug of war, and that's what on one hand, you don't want to impose. On the other hand, you don't want to offend them culturally, okay? But also you have to take into consideration, it does take a toll on you after a week or two, you as the gringo, right? Because it's so different, depends on the circumstances, right? We were very fortunate in Campeche because we got this room to stay in, and it actually had an air conditioner in it. You can't see it, it's over here, it's a wall unit. And so that was nice, and we had a kind of a regular, moderately modern regular bathroom. So our accommodations in Campeche were by Mexican standards, very, very nice, very nice. And so we were thankful to Sergio for giving us that. This is just a picture. Sergio is right here. He owns the company, and we're at his work. He's got this big kind of compound right outside of town where all his construction stuff is. This is Marcos, his basically his foreman, and Marcos is also a member of the church there. And there's coconut trees everywhere, and Marcos is cutting up coconuts for us. And we're having a little snack of coconuts. That's Javier, that's Eleazar, and there's Marcos. The thing about Marcos is he is always smiling. I never saw him not smiling. He's just fantastic. And this is, we were walking to Marcos's house. Now, I don't think the picture does it justice, but there are, first off, let me just say that the plan is non-existent, okay? I'm like, Javier, what are we doing? I don't know. And so if you think that there was some sort of itinerary, you're sadly mistaken. It is just, I did not know where we were going until we were on our way, and even then, it was a mystery, all right? And so I'll be honest with you, when you're driving in a place that you're starting to feel, okay, I'm a little not as comfortable as I was. We took a couple of turns, and then we stop and we get out and we start walking down this road right here. Your anxiety level can get a little high, right? But we're walking to Marcos's house down this road right here. And this is the back side of his house. That's Javier standing right here. This is the back side of Marcos's house. This is his kitchen, all right? This is essentially a metal building shed. This is their kitchen. It's essentially, again, it's covered, all right? And they can close it up. There's a door there, and this window kind of closes. But this is where we ate. There's a table in there, and they have a lot of their stoves are gas stoves with large gas containers, right? They don't have mainline gas, and they typically do not have electrical stoves. They have electricity mostly, but they don't typically have electrical stoves. But, and this is, a lot of them have this wash basin here that you would use sometimes to wash your hands. They would wash dishes, all sorts of things. So my point is, it is a different experience, all right? So if you ever do decide to go, be prepared a lot of times for a quite different experience. Having said that, the food was marvelous, right? Some of the best food I've ever had. The best guacamole I ever had was in that semi-outdoor kitchen, and the best coffee I've ever had was in that kitchen. All right, I'll have to tell you about it one day. And they love coffee. They have coffee all the time. I wanted to show you, this is another example of a typical building. You may be able to make it out. So here's the main structure, and here's basically a wall with the gate. All right, that's typical of the structures. Note this, I don't think you can see it here because it's too far away, but on top of this wall, they put a layer of mortar, and then they put glass on top of the wall. Well, you think, well, that's definitely a child hazard, right? But of course they do that, to protect people from climbing over the wall, right? And it was interesting, a lot of times I will watch Spanish language shows, and in one of those shows I actually saw that, and I was like, well, that's pretty authentic because this is everywhere, right? In the show I saw a wall that had this glass sticking up. So it's just, that's something you're going to see right there, is glass in the top of walls to prevent thieves from climbing over. Whoops, wait. I'm sorry. This is the backyard of Lorenzo's house. Lorenzo, I pointed him out earlier, is the father of the preacher in Merida. So Lorenzo's older, all right, and he just talks constantly, right? He's great. He's also has, this part of Mexico has a lot of Mayan influence and culture, and a lot of the people are descendants from Mayans, and you can tell it in their nose, their facial structure, and of course their language. Quite many of them still speak Mayan, and speak it to each other, This is his backyard, a couple of cats, right? They had a dog floating around here somewhere, but it just struck me this area was kind of a respite from the rest, from kind of the, it was enclosed and it had these great trees here. And I actually sat here, this was the first time I'd ever done this, and may have been the first time ever, but I actually sat on the curb right here and conducted a bankruptcy court hearing from Mexico over the telephone. So that was fantastic, right? Because our hearings are telephonic right now because of COVID. I was able to call in from Mexico. It was great. It's great. This is the front of Lorenzo's house, okay? And this is the preacher's car from Merida that we traveled in. I don't know if the picture does it justice, but that car is kind of small, right? And we got 4 people, so the preacher, Eleazar, me and Javier in the back, all right? And all our luggage, which was, everybody had 3 suitcases, like carry-on suitcases, and 3 backpacks. I didn't think it was going, but they got it in. And there we are. Yeah, right there. Me and Javier, we're buds. So I'm glad he's smaller than me because I'm like 1.5 and he's just a half, right? So this is, so we're going to move on from Campeche to Merida. And this is Eleazar, and this is the preacher there, Manuel, and Javier. So again, he's the son of Lorenzo in Campeche. And he was awesome, a wonderful guest, and does a lot of fantastic work there. This is what I say, old Merida. This building was built in 1540, give or take. So it's very old, right? You just think just a few decades past Christopher Columbus, right? Because the Spanish they're moving into Central and South America. And that's when this building was built. So it's a very old culture, very pretty. It's an old Catholic building, downtown Merida. Again, Merida is a large city, 800,000 plus people, probably closer to 900,000 people. It's very big. And so, and the downtown area, which we only went there once, it's a little bit more touristy, but again, not Cancun touristy, all right? This is typically people off the beaten path. You're more likely to see Mexican tourists and a lot of times European tourists, right? Than your typical American tourist. I would say 9 times out of 10, or 99 times out of 100, Americans fly into Cancun, they take the bus to the all-inclusive resort, and they stay, and then they take the bus back to the airport, and then they're done, right? Which, you know, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, I'm just saying that's typically what happens. Right? So downtown Merida is beautiful and everything. And here's the contrast. Here's the beautiful old Catholic church. And here is the Galacio De Cristo, their church building for the church there in Merida. And it's outside of town. There's a long story. They had another building. It's a long story too involved to tell right now. This is their current building. And it's kind of outside of town. And we'll see in a picture later, really in a more poverty-stricken area than even usual. Here's the inside of the building. It's just a 1-room building, right? Concrete here, metal structure on top, of course. No air conditioning at all. These chairs are omnipresent, right? They are everywhere, all right? Thank you, Coca-Cola, for providing chairs, because these red chairs are everywhere. This is the group, the church, the real church in Merida. Now here, we're not meeting in the building. While I was there, I had to leave a little early, so I was not able to meet on Saturday or Sunday. And during the week, they met in the preacher's house, okay? And this is essentially his garage / carport. See, here's this front wall, right? Here's the gate. He would normally park his car right here. And up back here, would be the house. We'll see a picture of that soon. But these are just some of our brothers and sisters, and they are all just wonderful, wonderful people. So, again, the hospitality shown to us was just over the top. And eventually they start asking you all sorts of questions, everything. And like us, they have, their problems and issues are similar to ours. Yeah. And in some ways different. And they want your opinion. They talk. They just, well, what do you think about this? Because they're hungry to talk to someone. And I hope I don't sound arrogant when I say this. I don't mean it to come across this way in any way, shape, or form, because I was humbled by my trip. But they are very glad and thankful, and I think they understand, this American has come here, right? And they want to know things, and they want to ask questions, and they realize, that. And again, that's very humbling, right? Because I'm not deserving of that in any way, shape, or form. And so, but it also, it lets you get closer to them, So just wonderful, wonderful people, that it just goes to show you that what the power of the gospel. The power of the gospel, it obliterates nationality, it obliterates race, it obliterates culture, language, everything. It just doesn't matter, because the power of the gospel. Isn't that just fantastic? So, this is Valentin. He is the father, he's the father of the preacher's wife in Merida, okay? He is very much Mayan, okay? Facial structure, he speaks Mayan. He and his wife speak Mayan to each other all the time. Of course, he speaks Spanish as well. I just thought this was a great picture of Javier sitting and talking to him. He's about 80 years old. Here's where this is where we were meeting. So this picture before here is right here where that car is. That's where we're all meeting. And so this will be the entryway into their house. And this is the preacher's house. This picture is Valentin, his wife. So they're the parents of the preacher's wife. They live there with them. This is Eleazar, the preacher from Dallas, Javier, and I'm the white guy. I sort of stood out, okay? It was hard to be inconspicuous. So now I thought this picture had to make, I have tons of pictures. This picture had to make it in, because this is Valentin and his wife when they were young. And just look at them, right? And note the pants. So I don't know if you can tell the pants. So he's got these short pants and sandals on. Same short pants and sandals, right? I just love that picture. So again, this is not about some special program where we can be the most efficient we can possibly be with spreading the gospel and monies and dollars and things like this. This is about people. It's about people. And these are people, right? So, this was probably the hardest part of the trip. This is actually not 50 yards away from the church building in Merida. I told you we were in a poorer part of town. It's on the outskirts. These are houses that people live in, all right? I have pictures of the people. I didn't put them in there. I just put the houses. But these are houses. And if you say, well, that's just a shack with a couple of pieces of tin, you're absolutely correct. That's what that is. Now, I never, although our brothers and sisters live in houses and in places that we would, be remiss and skeptical about, none of them lived in places like this. So this did shock me, right? So there's definitely poverty on levels that we cannot fathom sometimes. Now, so I spent about a week in Campeche, almost a week in Merida, and then I had to leave early, and so what happened was a brother from Cancun drove to Merida, which is about 4.5 hour drive, because the roads are not great. He drove to Merida, picked me up, and then we drove back to Cancun before dark. So, he's in the car 9-10 hours, and I'm in the car 4.5, 5 hours. He and his wife, and we'll see them in a minute. And on this trip, we stopped for lunch at this roadside restaurant, which is very common. And again, this is not in the Cancun brochures. This is not in your all-inclusive resorts. This is flat out. I don't even know the name of the town we were in, right? But yeah, I got a couple of stares, okay? But having said that, they have the best chicken. Mexico has the best chicken. It's incredible. But again, it was just an experience that, and a lot of times I was hesitant to take pictures, right? I didn't want to offend, and I didn't want to look like a overly tourist, but I wanted some pictures. So this was shot kind of from inside the car as we're driving away, right? So here is this. Jose was the person who picked me up. Here's Jose's wife. This is another sister in Cancun. I hate this as a selfie. I wanted to delete me because honestly, I didn't even know how to take a selfie. They had to show me. They said, take a selfie. I was like, I don't even know how to do that. So anyway, so Jose and his wife, they drove over, picked me up, and we drove back. And let's see what's next. Okay, just to show you that you just never know what's going to happen, right? There was a time, well, this lady, her husband was at work, he just wasn't home yet. I didn't know who I was staying with that night. My flight left the next morning at 8, and there was a discussion, and my Spanish is pretty good, but it's not perfect. And I was thinking, are they going to leave me here? I just didn't know what was going to happen. So again, it's kind of up in the air. But then we left her house, and then we went to her parents' house. So meet the parents right here, right? And the picture, I'm not sure if it does it justice. They're kind of little people, right? But they're fantastic. And again, I was like, well, am I staying here? I don't know. Where am I staying? But I did end up at Jose's house, and they were, again, beyond gracious host. But he is, they are, again, Mayan, a lot of Mayan ancestry. And I want to show you this. He has a Bible in Spanish and Mayan. So the Spanish is below, the Mayan is up here. And I asked him, I was like, can you buy that anywhere? Because it was old. It was very old. He said no. I'm hoping he's wrong. I'm hoping I can find one because I would like one. And another book for my wife to, tell me another book. But he showed me that, and that was just fantastic. So let's revisit our passage, right? And I don't even know how long I've gone, but I'm probably gone too long. Again, that was just barely touching the hem of the garment, but I hope it gave you some sense of the overview of where I've been. And again, I'm happy to talk to you about any questions, or if you just want to talk about it. But I think the question for all of us is this question posed in Matthew 9:38, right? What's going to be my work? And just to repeat, it does not have to be overseas. You don't have to leave Alabama or Birmingham. You don't have to learn a different language. There are lots of different things that we can each do, and we just need to think about our particular roles, our particular talents and abilities, desires. But regardless of what that is, the Lord wants us. He wants us to work because the harvest is plentiful. So I hope you enjoyed that and got a lot out of it. I know I did a lot more than I gave on that trip. So thank you for your time and attention.